Another way to get a good three-dimensional effect is to do some shading. And so this lesson will mainly be about using colored pencil and layering the different colors and shading to help with the three-dimensional effect and add to the effect of the perspective. Okay, now just for an example to show you, I made a thumbnail sketch. This is my vanishing point, and I just sketched outward and fit a bunch of things in, different structures and things like that. I just kept working from it. And then I started out my final drawing, and the final drawing is a lot like the thumbnail sketch, but not exactly, because I added things to it. But it still gave me my basic plan of what I wanted to do. And pretty much all of this stuff is things that I taught you when I was doing the demonstrations for perspective, except perhaps something like this I might have saved for those that really wanted to learn it, that they could go look at the demonstration themselves. But it's just really fun. And now the next thing I'm going to do is color it and shade it. Well, the other thing I did when I was off camera is I just gave it a basic coloring with colored pencils. I didn't do too much shading and stuff yet. I just wanted the basic color on there. Now I can do a whole lot of things with that. I'm going to pretend that the light's coming from the front, so it's going to be hitting the stair steps directly and then kind of fading out. But in any kind of a picture, any kind of a situation, there can be numerous light sources. So think about that when you do yours, but just kind of have an idea of where they're coming from. Okay, so if the light source is coming from here, then that means that it's going to be hitting the side of this, probably not very much at all. These, although they would get lighter as they move toward the light source. So to start with, I'm just going to go over them a little bit more to make them darker and then get them gradually lighter. And these will be a little bit darker than this is. So again, I'm going to go darker and then lighter. Now one of the things with shading is it should help to define the surfaces too. So it's good for one surface to be noticeably lighter or darker than the other one, and it really helps with a three-dimensional effect. And if you did a lot of nice drawing, you don't want to cover it up with your colored pencils, so you don't have to worry about outlining it. You should. Alright, now another thing you can do is you can use the colored pencils to layer, and you can shade with other colors besides just the color that you're using. And blue is a complementary color of orange, and that doesn't mean it's the only thing I can use to shade with, but it's a good choice. So I'm just gradually going over the orange and just fading the blue out. And sometimes you can just layer colors to layer colors because it looks cooler. Okay, now this part of the door frame, supposedly it's facing the light source directly. Although I'm going to make it just a little bit darker than the wall is right now to show the differences in the two surfaces. But this not so much, because if it's coming that way, then it's probably kind of missing this surface. So I can make it a little bit darker. Okay, so if the light's coming in this direction, then that means that it's getting darker as it goes back in. Of course, unless of course there's a light source back in. So I'll start back here at this wall, and then I'll just gradually shade. I'll go back over the areas that I want to be darker and just gradually fade into what I want to be lighter. So you go over it and then you just gradually lighten up your pressure and don't make as many strokes. This can be a little bit darker because, again, if the light's coming from a little bit above and from the front, it might not be so directly hit. Outlining this so that you can see it better, which is a good thing. And since you've colored it already with the basic colors, it really doesn't take real long to go ahead and add the shading. I'm going to make it a little bit darker over here. Like that. And I can even use blue to shade the brown. I guess blue is one of my favorite colors to use for shading. Just kind of lighten it, you know, just kind of like work it in there and layer it. Gives it a little bit more depth, I think, of the color, I mean. Now I'm envisioning the light is coming from the front, but kind of from the upper front, so I'm thinking that it's not going to hit the front of this platform directly. So I'm using brown and I'm layering it with orange to shade it, and doing the same thing with the steps, because I'm thinking that the light will be hitting the tops of the steps a lot more directly than it will the fronts of the steps. And it doesn't hurt to outline things when you draw them. I mean, after you've drawn them, you don't want to cover the drawing all up when you go to add color. Now this little crawl space under here, that's going to be in the dark. And so as you go back under that platform, it's going to get darker and darker. Coming out, it'll get lighter and lighter. And I'm using a combination of colors to do that. I'm using, well, black. I'm layering black there, and I had brown and I had blue, and I'm layering all those colors, and I'm making it really getting darker right back by the steps, and then getting lighter as it comes out. And the more you can do things like that, the more depth you will have in your drawing. Also, I could add a cast shadow, and I followed the perspective lines from the steps, and now I'm just using brown, and I'm using probably layer some blue with it too, and making it darker closer to the steps and lighter as it goes out away from them. And you have a cast shadow like this, it really makes a difference and makes a lot more of a three-dimensional effect. Okay, I'm using the brown to shade this little yellow building, but on the other hand, not all parts of the building have to be the same color either. Yeah, so I made the roof blue like a lot of the shingles are. And I decided to add this little spear kind of hanging in the air, and I'm going to shade it to make it look more three-dimensional by making it darker and gradually lighter, and then even adding some orange in there to blend with the blue and make it darker. Give it a cast shadow too. And then I decided I'm going to make the inside of the building really dark. And I'm going to make it really contrast strongly with that little sphere that's hanging in the air there. And it's good to define the lines and stuff that you drew. Well, I also decided to use some red and just layer it over the blue that I have for the sky. So you can layer colored pencils just to get different effects. It doesn't always have to be for shading and light and dark and things like that. And I've left my ceiling white, but even white surfaces have light and shade on them. So I'm going to have it getting darker farther away and then lighter closer to the front, since that's where my light source is. And overall, I think this gets a pretty good three-dimensional effect. So you should try some different things with thumbnail drawings and come up with some ideas and, use your imagination. It's a lot of fun to do this.